are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my series review, The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort, and reading and reviewing his works. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website. And that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And there are many ways to support the show. You can share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out the merchandise store and find all kinds of shirts with some other items with designs made by friends of the show. You can also, if you'd like to be part of the show, either through a written account of an experience you've had or by joining me on the show, you can click on the Share Experience link at the top of the website, the homepage, and fill out the form there, and we can see what we can do, and I'll either read your stuff on the show or have you join me on the show. Also, please follow friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and joins me on Saturdays as the co-host of this show, whenever she can. Also, Ricky of the Anything is Possible podcast, as I join him on his shows on Sundays. We talk all things paranormal. And also Michael Strange, host of Trouble Minds Radio, where I call into frequently, and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And takes care of all of that. A few things to note here when it comes to this reading and review of Fort's works here. There may be things that he says that you and or I may not agree with. And that is okay. Just be aware that when I'm reading, it is his words and thoughts. So, and also, please keep in mind there may be things that he talks about in his writing that seem mysterious to him at the time, that have maybe been figured out more in terms of science in the last 100 years or so since these books came out. And also, last but not least, there will always be mistakes that I make in pronunciation of words and names, because those are hard, and not all of them are in English either. So, let me get to something here that Satya and then Mike shared for me. It was a list of high-flying birds, basically. And so I'm going to probably just skim over a bunch of this. And it's just a section on high-flying birds. So there's a thing called the Ripple's Griffin vulture. Is the highest flying bird ever recorded, with confirmed flight at 11,300 meters, which is 37,000 feet. This record was established in 1973. So there's more here. My touchpad is being all wiggy because I got like a little bit of water on it from, I guess, I was drying my hands. I didn't get it off of there, so that's lovely. Anyway, but there are birds apparently, and I won't go through all this because there's just too much. And my mouse is being all weird. So, but yeah, if you look around online, I'm sure you can find it, find information about it. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to get back to the material here, and I will You all can check out, look up online links to birds and their heights and everything that they can fly at. And so it's possible that some of the things that Fort was describing there may have been from birds. So anyway, there may have been birds. Anyway, sorry about that. I didn't get to read all that for you all. And sorry in the chat there, I didn't get to read all that. Like I said, my touchpad is being a bit, acting a bit weird. So I'm just going to try not to touch that too much right now. And get back to the reading here on my PC. Let's see here where I left off at. Okay, here we go. Service explains, and that's SCRVISS, so it does seem like it's service. Service explains, of course. Otherwise, he'd not be Professor Service. It's a little contest in relative approximations to realness. Professor Service thinks that what Schroeder saw was the round shadow of a mountain in the region that had become lighted. He assumes that Schroeder never looked again to see whether the shadow could be attributed to a mountain. That's the crux. Conceivably, a mountain could cast a round, and that means detached, shadow in the lighted part of the moon. Professor Service could, of course, explain why he disregards the light in the first place. Maybe it had always been there in the first place, and that's sort of a joke of Fort's dig at some of these people that he talks about here. If he couldn't explain, he'd still be an amateur. We have another datum. I think it is more extraordinary than vast thing, black and poised like a crow over the moon. And again, that's something he keeps repeating just to drive it home to everybody. But only because it's more circumstantial and because it has corroboration do I think it more extraordinary than vast poised thing, black as a crow, over the moon. Mr. H.C. Russell, who was usually as orthodox as anybody, I suppose. At least he wrote FRAS, I'm not sure what the letters are for abbreviations there, after his name, tells in the Observatory 2-374 one of the wickedest or most preposterous stories that we have so far exhumed. Excuse me. That he and another astronomer, G.D. Hurst, were in the Blue Mountains near Sydney, New South Wales, I believe, in SW. And Mr. Hurst was looking at the moon. He saw on the moon what Russell calls one of those remarkable facts, which being seen should be recorded, although no explanation can at present be offered. And that's all in quotation marks there. That may be so. It is very rarely done. Our own expression upon evolution by successive dominants and their correlates is against it. On the other hand, we express that every era records a few observations out of harmony with it, but adumbratory or preparatory to the spirit of eras still to come. It's very rarely done. Lashed by the phantom scourge of a now passing era, the world of astronomers is in a state of terrorism, though of a highly attenuated, modernized, devitalized kind. Let an astronomer see something that is not of the conventional uh, celestial sights, or something that it is, in quotation marks, improper to see. His very dignity is in danger. Someone of the corralled and scourged may stick a smile into his back. He'll be thought of unkindly. With a hardihood that is unusual in his world of ethereal sensitiveness, Russell says of Hearst's observation, in quotation marks, he found a large part of it covered with a dark shade, quite as dark as the shadow of the earth during an eclipse of the moon, in quotation marks. But the climax of hardihood or impropriety or wickedness, preposterousness, or enlightened, let's see here. What happened here? Okay. What happened here? Wow. I just, did I scroll like 4 pages? Sorry about that. Hang on, everyone. Okay, conventional celestial. Okay. Sights. So I got that. I don't know what happened. But the climax of hardihood or impropriety. Okay, I read that already. Let me see here. But the climax of hardihood or improprietyness. Okay, it was middle of the page. That's why. Sorry, blind person here, doing the best he can. Legally blind anyway. Anyway, or enlightenment. There we go. That was the in quotation marks here. One could hardly resist the conviction that it was a shadow, yet it could not be the shadow of any known body, close quotation marks. Richard Proctor was a man of some liberality. After a while, we shall have a letter, which once upon a time we'd have called delirious. Don't know that we could read such a thing now, for the first time, without incredulous laughter, which Mr. Proctor permitted to be published in Knowledge. But a dark, unknown world that or could cast a shadow upon a large part of the moon, perhaps extending far beyond the limb of the moon, a shadow as deep as the shadow of this earth. Too much for Mr. Proctor's politeness. I haven't read what he said, but it seems to have been a little coarse. Russell says that Proctor freely used his name in the Echo, that's a publication, of March 14th, 1879, ridiculing this observation, which had been made by Russell as well as Hearst. If it hadn't been Proctor, it would have been someone else. But one notes that the attack came out in a newspaper. There is no discussion of this remarkable subject, no mention in any other astronomic journal. The disregard was almost complete, but we do note that the columns of the observatory were open to Russell to answer Proctor. In the answer, I note considerable intermediateness. Far back in 1879, it would have been a beautiful positivism if Russell had said, quotation marks, there was a shadow on the moon. Absolutely, it was cast by an unknown body, close quotation marks. According to our religion, if he had then given all his time to the maintaining of this one stand, of course breaking all friendships, all ties with his fellow astronomers, his apotheosis would have occurred, greatly assisted by means well known to quasi-existence when its compromises and evasions and phenomena that are partly this and partly that are flouted by the definite and uncompromising. It would be impossible in a real existence. But Mr. Russell of quasi-existence says that he did resist the conviction that he had said that one could hardly resist, and most of his resentment is against Mr. Potter's thinking that he had not resisted. It seems too bad if apotheosis be desirable. The point in intermediatism here is not that to adapt to the conditions of quasi-existence is to have what is called success in quasi-existence, but is to lose one's soul, but is to lose one's chance of attaining soul, self, or entity. One indignation quoted from Proctor interests us. Quotation marks here. What happens on the moon may at any time happen to this earth, close quotation marks. Or that is just the teaching of this department of advanced astronomy. That Russell and Hurst saw the sun eclipsed relatively to the moon by a vast dark body. That many times have eclipses occurred relatively to this earth by vast dark bodies. That there have been many eclipses that have not been recognized as eclipses by scientific kindergartens. There is a merger, of course. We'll take a look at it first. That, after all, it may have been a shadow that Hurst and Russell saw. But the only significance is that the sun was eclipsed relatively to the moon by a cosmic hazard of some kind, or a swarm of meteors close together, or a gaseous discharge left behind by a comet. My own acceptance is that vagueness of shadow is a function of vagueness of intervention. That a shadow as dense as the shadow of this earth is cast by a body denser than hazes and swarms. The information seems definite enough to, or in this respect, in quotation marks, quite as dark as the shadow of this earth during the eclipse of the moon, close quotation marks. Though we may not always be as patient toward them as we should be, it is our acceptance that the astronomic primitives have done a great deal of good work. For instance, in the allaying of fears upon this earth. Sometimes it may seem as if all science were, to us, very much like what a red flag is to bulls and antisocial or anti-socialists. It's not that. It's more like what unsquare meals are to bulls and anti-socialists. Not the scientific, but the insufficient. Our acceptance is that evil is the negative state, by which we mean the state of maladjustment, discord, ugliness, disorganization, inconsistency, injustice, and so on, as determined in intermediateness, not by real standards, but only by higher approximations to adjustment, harmony, beauty, organization, consistency, justice, and so on. Evil is outlived virtue or incipient virtue that has not yet established itself, or any other phenomenon that is not in seeming adjustment, harmony, consistency with the dominant. The astronomers have functioned bravely in the past. They've been good for business. The big interests think kindly, if at all. It's bad for trade to have an intense darkness come upon an unaware community and frighten people out of their purchasing values. But if an obscuration be foretold, and if it then occur, may seem a little uncanny, only a shadow, and no one who was about to buy a pair of shoes runs home panic-stricken and saves the money. And that's, let me see here, I can probably, upon general principles, we accept that astronomers have quasi-systematized data of eclipses, or have included some and disregarded others. They have done well. They have functioned. But now they're negative, or negatives, or they're out of harmony. And that is where we'll stop with that. I do like what Fort is sort of describing there. It reminds me of how, again, if anything is unexplained or anomalous or paranormal or supernatural, there is this reaction that a lot of people have to it, that it can't exist. It shouldn't exist. It's evil because it's breaking the rules of what we think reality should be. So I do see that a lot, and I see that within the realms of the paranormal, of all these things. There are silos within all this as well that people prefer to stay in, and that's their choice. But anyway, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.